Okay, work on talking about more angles, more discussion on angles for lacrosse goalies. Okay, so this I covered this a couple weeks ago, and then I think it was Chris Gorman who asked me this question, but I apologize if it wasn't Chris. But the idea is I want to expand a little bit more on talking about angle discussions. Oh, thank you, thanks, Alex. I see you. Um, so uh, one of the like I believe words matter. Okay, words matter, and one of the word verbiages that is used in the lacrosse goalie community is this idea of being square to the shooter. Okay, and what I think is happening, well, it's happening in this case for the question that was sent to me, is there's a misunderstanding of what that means. Being square to the shooter, as I define it, is I want to be if I took a line from the shooter to the cage, okay, I wanna be facing that line, like, I wanna be perpendicular. Like, this is where when it comes to angles and whatnot, there is there's a couple angles to consider. One is the, um, the shooter to the goalie to the cage, okay? And what I'm gonna talk about here a second ago is the ball to the shooter, the ball to the cage, and then the goalie's relationship to that because 'cause they're not the same, okay? Let me see if I can pull up this Dylan Ward clip. Um, it was here. Okay. So so this is a clip. Um, let me just clip this here. Okay, so um sorry, it's gonna be hard for me to this is not my best work here, but I'll do my best. Okay. So ball is side right moving to top right. And Dylan Ward is a right-handed goalie. Okay. And where the ball is positioned right now, if this player were to shoot the ball, which they can't because of the position of the midfielder, okay? This applies to girls too, okay? So right now, if this shooter tried to like rip this ball at the cage, they would have a difficult time because the positioning of the midfielder, okay? So, uh now in that um in those angles, okay? The I like where Dylan Ward is facing because basically he's giving up more stick to his stick side or more cage to his stick side than to his off stick side. So that's really important. Okay. But as the angle, so he is what we would call he's square to the shooter. Okay. In this case. But as this changes, okay, as this changes, now this player goes top side. Okay. So he goes top side. And now that midi is kind of hooped. But Dylan Ward doesn't really move. He doesn't move at all. So now this is opening up the far side post. Okay, so the post towards his for those of you guys that don't know far side, it's the furthest pipe away from the shooter. Okay, so that would be his left. Now this player moves again. Dylan Ward has still not moved. That left foot looks like he's leaning a little bit. Now he's taken a little bit of a step, but the angle has changed where he is lined up on the shooter. But when that ball comes through, he's giving up a lot to that far side. Okay. So right here, as this player shoots the ball, there's a lot of net to that far side. And as a righty goalie, okay, if I stop this here, I want this goalie to be a little bit more to his left. Okay. I want less space to be shot to the far side, like away from the like off stick side. All right. I don't want that. All right. So a goalie has to move. And this is where whenever people debate like, oh, what does your goalie play? A 3-step arc or a 5-step arc? I'm like, seriously? My goalies play the be in the right position when the ball gets shot arc. How's that? That's not good, right? It's not about 3-step or 5-step or any of that. When that started to become popular back in like the 90s, I was like, that's like the dumbest thing ever. Um, that like it's just it's like Oreo flavored smart food, which I saw the other day. Um, it's just silly. As a goalie, so let's come to an agreement on a couple things. One, I've got a better chance of stopping a ball shot to my stick side than my off stick side. I think we all agree on that, right? Although what's really fascinating is that you'll see a lot of goalies get lit up stick side high, and the reason for that, I think, is because goalies we develop this assumption that we're going to have to move, like they're not possibly going to shoot that at my stick side high, right? That's my stick's there. Why the hell would they do that? And then sure enough, you see a goalie like get beat with a ball that passes their stick by like an inch and a half. And I believe what happens there is the goalie is assuming the ball is going to go elsewhere, and then as that ball is on route, the eyes go, "Oh shit, it's coming back to that place where we thought we weren't going to have to go, and now we have to retool ourselves and get there, and now it's too late." Okay, that's what happens, in my opinion. All right, so the idea is that as a goalie, we don't want our goalie to be taught to line up on the shooter. We want the goalie to be ready when the ball is shot, like where the ball is released with a stick, okay? That can change. And what's fascinating is that depending on where your goalie stands, they will either have more net to cover at the time the ball is shot or less net to cover depending on where they're standing, okay? So a really advanced team. Now, I'll just point out something here that really just drives me, just frosts me. Like I love that, frost me. Is this long pole trying to block the stick head of the shooter as opposed to just getting a stick on the glove? Right now, this happens in a heartbeat. This is very advanced, but this is a skill that is for a defenseman that can actually do it. And at the pro ranks, I would expect it. Like as you watch this long pole slide, okay, as you watch the long pole slide, watch what he does with his stick, right? He doesn't even try to lead with a poke check. I'm not even sure where he's going, but the idea is that for those of you with high school age kids, is that if you can get that defenseman to just lead with a poke check, okay, two things will happen. One, if they can hit the glove, the cuff of the glove of the shooter, that ball will go wide of the cage. Okay. And that's when, as a goalie, I teach my goalies to go right back at that defenseman and say, hey, great job. Okay. The other thing you'll notice here is that from the goalie's perspective, the goalie has not, like Dylan Ward, has not really exploded off that left foot, has he? He's just kind of pivoted. The knee is pivoted over that left foot. And that to me is when I talk about how like we haven't seen the best goalies play this sport, that to me is a reason why, is an example of why. Is that a well-trained goalie, in my opinion, should be able to, like, recognize, "Okay, that ball's going to my off stick low. I've got what's the closest thing to that position? It's my foot, it's my shin, it's my ankle," right? And they're gonna the lacrosse goalie of the future is going to whip out a foot and make that save. Why? Because they've had thousands of protected repetitions to wire that in. Whereas a goalie like Dylan Ward is still trying to make that save with his stick head. And because he's slightly out of position, that makes this save even harder to make. Okay. So it makes it even harder to make because he's just like you're now trying to get a stick head even further there. I mean, literally, if you think about this, we're trying to move a stick head basically 6 feet. It's probably more than 6 feet, right? Like when we're going like, okay, here's a goalie in position here, and we're trying to move that stick head all the way down over here inside that post to make that save. When in fact we just have a foot here that if we're standing properly and athletically, we can just boom. Like if I took a really good soccer player, like a world class soccer player, and put them in the cage, and instead of a lacrosse ball, I shot a soccer ball at them, right? They're trained not to use their feet or sorry, not their hands. They would just get a foot there and probably really, really well, right? And so my question to you and your goalies is, well, can they do that? Probably not. Why? They haven't trained it. How come? Well, you either have never thought about it, and this is the first time you're hearing about it, and you're going to go out and try it tomorrow, or two, you tried it once and they got their foot there and they got hurt and they couldn't do it anymore. Okay, that is not world class training, in my opinion, right? To be world class at anything, you need thousands of repetitions. And and there's no amount of athleticism here that would be able to get a stick head to this spot in that time frame. Okay, so what do we do? Do we just give up? No, we now have to add something else to our arsenal, and that's making a save to our off stick low with that foot, whether that's your right foot or your left foot. And the question is, can you do it? Can you go out tomorrow and train it? Yes or no? Right? It's a very simple question. Okay, so that was one. All right. Just an aside, just as kind of a fun video to show. This one I got a kick out of this one. This is again Brian Phipps. All right, but watch what happens. Right, boom. So this ball is basically headed for Brian Phipps's face. Okay, maybe his throat guard, maybe the top of the chest protector. The bottom line is this ball is going right at the center line of the goalie. Okay, but and this to me is thousands of repetitions of that Brian Phipps has had and other goalies have had of trying to make the save with their stick, right? Again, this kind of goes back to my like like a hockey goalie wouldn't try to get their blocker in front of their face to make the save. They would take it off the mask. And you're talking to a kid who was a hockey goalie at one point. I know how this works, right? I'm not trying to get my hands in front of my face, right? A hockey goalie just takes it off the mask. But what happens, this is kind of funny, is that Brian Phipps gets his hand there, but because of the timing and the direction, the ball basically like bounces off the plastic above his finger. It might have hit his thumb, not sure, and goes in the cage. Okay, doesn't that suck? Right? And you watch the goalie. He's like, "Dang it, what happened? I was right there." You know. So what I believe is that now that looks like it's off his mask, but it's off his if it's off his hand. So a couple things here. One, this in this scenario, the shooter is getting destroyed. And so the shooter is not that much of a they're a threat because of their distance to the cage, but what happens here is as a goalie, the worst thing is making a save, like deflecting a ball, but it still goes in the cage. But the when you start looking at the angles, if I can get you out further away from the cage and you can make a similar save, in this case, the save would have been a ball right to the chest or the helmet or the throat guard or whatever. That ball, if it had hit him there, it probably wouldn't have gone in the net, right? But because again, the goalie's like not comfortable with getting hit and he's trying to get his hand, then this deflection happens, and that's it's a little unlucky. I get it, but if Brian Phipps was a step out at the shooter, this deflection goes wide, right? This deflection goes wide, or it hits him and bounces somewhere else, right? But the fact this goes in the cage is really is disappointing to me. Okay, because if we rewind this again, okay, rewind this. This player, this was a feed across the middle to a little to you know an attackman, and this is a dangerous shot. Don't get me wrong, but the timing is such that again, I want that long pole to be skewering right up into the glove. By the way, the referee here is Matt Palin, who was an All American like Syracuse national champion back in the late '80s, early '90s. Right, but there's not a lot of energy. This bothers me. There's so much wasted contact by this defenseman. Right, we want to get that stick like right, even like up in the elbow here, right? The inside of this elbow, if he gets a poke check right in there, first of all, there's no protection. Hurts like a you know what. Um, that would change the trajectory of this ball incredibly, right? But instead, he's like sliding, and that takes more time. The guy gets a shot off, right? But then the shot goes right at the goalie's chest, you know. And so these are things where I don't think Brian Phipps necessarily can and with all due respect to Brian, I don't know Brian personally. We have had goalies that we have worked probably he doesn't know that. Well, anyway, whatever. But the idea here is that I don't think a goalie like Brian Phipps or any of the other pro goalies can change so dramatically that all of a sudden they're able to process that ball and just take it. Okay. I think Blaze Reardon might be able to, but anyway, the idea here is that you're not going to retool a goalie like this at this age. And what happens a lot of times is then they therefore think that you can't necessarily train a young goalie to do that. And I disagree. I totally disagree. Right? I believe that the goalies of the future that understand that they're using equipment as a tool, they're going to play very differently. Okay, they're going to play very very differently, right? And so that's so this is a little unlucky. I get it. It's I know what that feels like, right? And you're just like, dang it, I was there, I got all of it, and it's still in the cage, So anyway, so I'm assuming that was like stick, shoulder, and then in the cage. Okay. But that's really important. So what would I encourage a goalie to do here? I want them to be out a little bit further, a little bit more aggressive. Um, this shot is probably going in the top third of the cage. And so when you come out, that and I'll this is processing an innocent. This ball is probably going in the top third because if they try to go any lower, they would they might miss, or if they try to bounce it, it's not a bounceable ball because that would bounce over the cage from this angle. But yeah, it's unfortunate. So for Coach Phipps there, I feel bad for him, but I still think it's a savable ball. Okay, so when it comes to, I know we got a little off topic there, but let's talk a little bit more about angles. Your goalie's got to understand that they're playing the ball, like where that ball is going to leave the stick. And when a shooter is close to the cage, that can be a massive swing, right? If I fake you right-handed to the side, and that's like, say that's 3 feet off my center line, and then I come back around and I may shoot off my left hand, again, that's a 6-foot swing. That changes angles, and the closer you are to the cage, the more difficult that is to process. And the only way to deal with that is to be as athletic as possible to get across the front of the cage. Okay, that's really important, right? You got to be as athletic as possible in front of the cage as you can be, to get in position, because you're trying to be in position when that ball is released, right? That's the key. So we're not trying to be centered on the shooter. We want to be centered on the ball. Okay. And so that's the key. And that doesn't necessarily mean like being square to the shooter. It means I'm facing you. I am perpendicular to you. Right? If I take a line to the body to the cage, I'm perpendicular to that line, but I'm still planning to be in position for when that ball is released. Okay, that's the critical factor, is that wherever that ball is released, and if I'm playing you, hard to my stick side, I want to be, and I've got a note here. This if at least Phipps is wearing a knee pad. Yeah, it's on that off stick knee, right? Which is the slowest place to get the ball. But I can guarantee you Brian Phipps hasn't trained thousands of kick stave with his off stick leg, right? So anyway, all right. All right. So did that help? If that helped you guys tonight, do me a favor, leave me a like, again, this is the slowest month of the year, so leave me some love. I'm sorry I missed you guys last night, but my son just started school, and it's been a crazy couple days. And mom was in town for 10 days. And I hope you guys saw my video of us on the top of a glacier, the Athabasca Glacier in Jasper, BC. It was pretty damn cool. Jasper, Alberta. It's pretty damn cool. So listen, everybody, happy back to school. I hope you guys are doing well, and life is good, and the lacrosse is going well. Don't forget to hit the weight room. Okay, that might be what your goalie needs most. But as always, I hope you enjoyed tonight, and I'll see you next week. Ciao. All right, guys, thanks for watching, and thanks for listening wherever you are. Do me a favor, hit the like button if you like this, and be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. When you're ready, head on over to lacrossegoalieuniversity.com/coaching so I can work with you and your goalie. And while you're at it, check out athletespecific.com to learn more about mental performance and high performance. You may not know this, but I work with athletes in a variety of sports. Lacrosse is my love, but man, I love athletes and the families who support them. So head on over to athletespecific.com and check it out. I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.